Hey everyone, it's me. Today we're going to be talking about a personality test, and I'm going to be taking it, and we're going to see where we end up and what personality type we get. By we, as always, I mean myself and only myself. This test is not indicative of what you might be. This test is not even really indicative of what I might be, depending on what your stance is on the 16 personalities test. But I thought it'd be fun, so why don't we go ahead and talk through it. Alright, let's start off, team. Number 1, you regularly make new friends. For this one, I would say I'm on option number 3. For this one, it's basically, can I not scroll back? Okay, whatever. Basically, I think that regularly is not really a thing, because, I mean, I kind of just am limited to the people in my classes, and like extracurriculars and clubs and stuff, because I am a student. So I think that regularly making new friends is not necessarily the case, but I do make new friends in basically all of these different groups, so I would say that it's on like a semi-regular basis, if that makes sense. So more to agree, but still pretty neutral. You spend a lot of your free time exploring various random topics that pique your interest. I would say yeah, that's basically like just chilling on YouTube, finding random stuff. I would say maybe even going to fully agree right there would be accurate too, but I think that a lot of my free time is just spent exploring topics I'm already interested in. So maybe not random, based on the diction there. Seeing other people cry can easily make you feel like you want to cry too. I guess slight disagree. I mean, I think the easily here is the modifier that breaks it for me. But yeah, seeing other people cry is like, you know, you feel empathy for them, and sometimes it can make you feel like you want to cry too. That's kind of just how it is. You often make a backup plan for a backup plan. Never. Live in the moment. That's not necessarily true, but I never really make backup plans for my backup plans. I have one backup plan, and if that doesn't work, I just wing it. Yeah. And sometimes I don't have a backup plan at all. YOLO. You usually stay calm, even under a lot of pressure. I would say, slight agree. I would say that I do usually stay calm, but under a lot of pressure, that's not a situation that I'm typically in. And when it is, a lot of the times the pressure is based on me pressuring myself. So I think that externally I don't really express it very well. But yeah, I'd say I usually stay calm. In those moments when I'm sort of just like dealing with things alone, though, I think it is often difficult to stay calm and level-headed, because you're always like second-guessing yourself, and these crazy things are happening to you, but you might not be able to contain that if it's just by yourself. At social events, you rarely try to introduce yourself to new people and mostly talk to the ones you already know. Okay, this one is kind of different, kind of difficult to answer, honestly. I would say that rarely try to introduce yourself to new people. I would say I disagree with this one. I do talk a lot with people I already know, but I do try to mingle. I would say maybe slight disagree here, actually. That could be more accurate. You prefer to completely finish one project before starting another. No. I feel like if I try to finish one project in this certain period of time, I end up getting into a brain stuck moment, and I feel like maybe it's just that my attention span is so short that I can't do one thing for a long period of time, but no, that's not really how I operate. You're very sentimental. I would say big agree. I'm a very sentimental person. I think being emotional is not necessarily a bad thing. I think that it's good to be expressive, but to be honest, I don't think I outwardly express it very well, but internally I do hold a lot of sentimental feeling. Definitely. You like to use organizing tools like schedules and lists. I'm actually very bad at this, so I rarely make schedules. I do make lists sometimes, and I use those to sort of organize what I want to do in a certain day, but scheduling like days in advance is something that I rarely do, and I honestly should do more. So I think for right now, we're gonna say slight agree or slight disagree, because lists sometimes, schedules no. Even a small mistake can cause you to doubt your overall abilities and knowledge. Not really. I think that at this point I am fairly cognizant of where I'm good at things and where I'm bad at things and where I need to improve my knowledge in. So this isn't really applicable with small mistakes. If I do make a huge blunder, though, I would maybe start to question whether I need to shore up my knowledge on something or practice something more. But I feel fairly confident in my abilities in things that I know I should be good in. And I feel understandably unconfident in things that I do not know how to do or I'm not good at. So not really, no. I feel like this answer has changed. I've maybe matured a little bit since I last took this test. You feel comfortable just walking up to someone you find interesting and striking up a conversation. For this one, someone I find interesting and striking up a conversation. I feel like I could do that, yeah. I think that this does happen, like if you're waiting at the bus stop and you see someone interesting, striking up a conversation isn't too difficult. But I think that it's not really something that I would do very often. It's going out of the way to talk to someone random, that even if I find them interesting, it doesn't necessarily mean that we would mesh well. And I feel like it might be bothersome to them as well. I try to not be bothersome to people in general. So I feel like I would feel comfortable just walking up to someone, but again, that circumstance is not necessarily something that I encounter very often. Next, you are not too interested in discussing various interpretations and analyses of created works. Hard disagree. I really like talking about various interpretations of things, and I like hearing good interpretations a lot. If you have a bad interpretation, get better. No, I'm just joking, but I think that discourse about creative works is the most valuable thing that you can have about it. And I think that sharing opinions makes everybody wiser and a more informed person on the topic. So there's always ways that you can find different viewpoints and different things, and that's the thing I really like about historical analysis and critical commentary. You are more inclined to follow your head than your heart. This one is like always a weird question, because I do think that yes, you do have the compromise answer of following both, but when it comes down to it, head over heart, heart over head, I would say I do try to follow my head more than my heart usually, because, you know, following your heart could just be a whim, but you got to be reasonable about what you do. I do think that a lot of the times I do just sort of go with what feels good or what I would like to do. So I think that I would agree that I usually follow my head and my heart, but that might not necessarily be the case. So I'm going a very slight agree on this one. You usually prefer just doing what you feel like at any given moment instead of planning a particular daily routine. Yeah. I would say that it's not always the case. Sometimes I'd have things that I actually really need to do, and, you know, kind of got to get them done at some point during the day. But I do usually just do what I feel like doing, and that is something that maybe is not so good going into a more organized life in the future. So maybe something to work on. I'm learning more about myself, I guess. You rarely worry about whether you make a good impression on people you meet. No, I do worry about that. I think that making a good impression on someone is very important, and if you don't make a good impression the first time, it just sets you up for difficulty later on. So yeah, always try to make a good impression. Never be late if you can. I know I am not exactly a peak of punctuality, but do make a good impression, I think, is generally good. I enjoy participating in group activities. I mean, group activities is literally anything involving more than one person, but yeah, I would say I generally enjoy participating in group activities. If activities mean something fun. If it's like group work, hard disagree. Much prefer working solo. Greater creative control, greater direction, you understand where you're going more, etc. But I do see a lot of value in group activities. You like books and movies that make you come up with your own interpretation of the ending? Not necessarily. I would say that I'm somewhere between here and here. I think that having your own interpretation of the ending is interesting, but oftentimes it makes the story feel incomplete. And this is the case with a lot of stories. You should build up to an ending that makes sense based on the way you've written your characters, the way that the story is structured, or structured up to the point at which you cut off, I guess, such that you'd be able to have an interpretation of the ending that comes very reasonably. And there would be one interpretation of the ending that the author writes that would be the interpretation. And if they end up just deciding to not write this, you should be able to get really close to this ending based on just your understanding of the characters if you know them deeply. So I don't think there's too much merit in making your audience just work for this, and you could put it in yourself. And it could spark some interesting discourse, I guess, some interesting discussion, but generally I'm not a fan. I like, especially in like the short story format, you have to be extremely concise with your writing and have extremely good direction. If you don't have direction to your writing, then you can meander and be lost and your story doesn't make sense. Of course, there's different story shapes that you can take. Meandering is not necessarily a bad thing in all cases, but you want to tell a story that fulfills itself. Like if I wrote a book with all the Harry Potter characters acting in a certain way at a certain time, like certain characters would be more spontaneous and certain characters would be more willing to fight for change, etc. By the last book or like the last chapter, you should be able to figure out what the characters might do when thrown into a certain circumstance. That's why fan fiction is so popular. That's why I think it's valuable for analyzing characters too. So overall, I think that making your own interpretation of the ending, it's kind of a fun exercise, but generally I like when authors just, they know what they have in mind, and that's resolute. Kind of a case-by-case basis thing, but generally I would say disagree, leaning towards this side. Your happiness comes more from helping others accomplish things than your own accomplishments. This is a really hard question because your own accomplishments often include things that help other people, depending on your role in your workplace environment or school environment, or wherever you may be. So I think that it's not like a mutually exclusive thing. You can help others accomplish things and be accomplished yourself at the same time. Like if you're a doctor or a surgeon or something, if you do a surgery, you're accomplishing something, but you also help others accomplish things, i.e. staying alive. So I think in my case, my happiness usually comes from my own accomplishments. But I feel accomplished when I do things that benefit other people in my school environment. But I think the helping others accomplish things is the key here, because I don't really care if I help people accomplish things. I care if I just help people in general. And helping people feels more like my own accomplishment than helping them accomplish something else. So I would say that I disagree with this. I'm interested in so many things that I find it difficult to choose what to try next. No, not really. I have a certain set of interests that I like to pursue, such as reading, writing, playing video games, studying certain fields. So I don't really find it difficult to choose what to try next because I have a lot to try from. And having this narrowed down body of interests but wide array of things to consume or learn from makes it slightly easier, I guess, to figure out what to try next. And of course I have a lot of really great friends who recommend books, movies, games, things like that, to better my understanding of media or literature or whatever. So no, I think I disagree with this statement. You're prone to worrying that things will take a turn for the worse. Not really. I would say that I used to be very much a pessimistic person or have a negative outlook, but I have seen some things over the past couple of years, or months to years, I guess. And I remember Conan O'Brien quotes. I like Conan O'Brien. And he was like, he said he really disliked pessimism because it doesn't get you to where you want or need to be. Having a pessimistic outlook on life makes it more difficult for only yourself, and that's not really something that you should strive to. You should not strive to make things more difficult to yourself. You should try to ease your burdens and accomplish things that you can. So I don't think that there's a lot of value to worrying things will take a turn for the worse, but it does happen. I do agree. What I say, I'm prone to worrying things will take a turn for the worse. I mean, yeah, I am a person who worries quite a bit because I want things to turn out well. I want people to succeed, but there are, of course, impediments that get in the way. And I know that it's not necessarily the best thing to worry about it taking a turn for the worse, but I do worry. I think it's important just to not believe that it'll take a turn for the worse. What is it like? Prepare for the worst, hope for the best, something like that. I think that is a reasonable mentality to have. Maybe not preparing for the worst situation, but preparing for a situation that doesn't necessarily go your way. But of course, you don't want to infect yourself with that negative mindset. So I think that I will say a very slight yes, because I do worry. That is something that does happen, but I don't actively try to do that, or whatever like pessimistic outlook you would want to have. I try not to be like that. Not necessarily like there's one that is significantly better than the other, but I think that if you can, try to be optimistic about things, because you want things to succeed. You avoid leadership roles in group settings. Disagree. I don't necessarily seek to be the leader in every case, because I want everybody to have, if possible, equal share of discussion and relatively equal participation, I suppose. But in a group setting, it's not necessarily the case that everybody can contribute equally. So if necessary, or if it seems like nobody else wants to step up, I will take a leadership role in a group setting. That is absolutely true. You are definitely not an artistic type of person. Now this is interesting because I used to really not think of myself as an artistic type of person because I suck at drawing. But I've learned, of course, that that's not the only type of art. You can creatively express yourself in many ways. So I think I disagree with the definitely not an artistic type of person. Am I definitely not an artistic type of person? I am not a definitely not artistic type of person. I would not say I am 100% an artistic type of person, but I appreciate art. I strive to create things resembling art through writing. Writing is an art, yeah. So I would say that I disagree with this. You think the world would be a better place if people relied more on rationality and less on their feelings? Yeah. I mean, the thing is, a lot of people are just naturally irrational. That's not true. A lot of people have developed in a way that causes them to believe in irrational things, or things that I would perceive as irrational. So I think that it's difficult to say, because a lot of times feelings are correct and you should treat them as valid. But really, I feel like in the modern day, and in America specifically, we should seek to be more rational people. And I think that would help everybody. There's a lot of emotion, anger, hate, divisiveness that goes on in our day-to-day lives. I think that if we did away with that and tried to be more reasonable with one another, it would be easier. And of course, more reasonable with the things that make sense for the betterment of all. So yes, I strongly agree with this. You prefer to do your chores before allowing yourself to relax. I would prefer it maybe. I don't necessarily actually do it, but it feels really good to do the chores and then relax. So slight agree, because I do kind of enjoy it more, but I really don't do it more. I kind of just intersperse relaxation with chores, and that's not necessarily the best way to do it, but I do it that way. So I think we're about at this like slightly agreed part. I think that's good. You enjoy watching people argue? No, I hate watching people argue. I would prefer if people got along, of course, in that idealistic way of saying it. But I think that watching people argue about things is often inane and often frustrating, and I would prefer if people found ways to either compromise or figure out which way would benefit everybody the most. Yeah, I'm not a person for debate much. I prefer like discussion, not necessarily debating, and I just think that people arguing is a thing that we should avoid in work settings and family settings and group settings. We strive for harmony, and arguing is often not the best way to achieve that. You tend to avoid drawing attention to yourself. I do say so, yeah. I think that with this question, it's not really like avoiding drawing attention to myself, but yeah, I guess it kind of is. I don't want to be that person who's necessarily in front or is like the figurehead or the leader. It does happen that you do have to draw your attention to yourself at times, but I think seeking attention is a very slippery slope, and I'm prone to it. Everybody's prone to it, but I try to avoid drawing attention when possible, because I don't think it's necessary. I think that if you can have a requisite amount of attention, you can be acknowledged for the things that you do, and you can have attention when you have something to say that is important or valuable or funny. But otherwise, I try not to draw too much attention, I would say. And perhaps that is to my detriment. Maybe I should put myself out there more. We'll see. My mood can change very quickly. That is true. I know externally I may not seem that way, but I do get frustrated with people, with things, quite frequently. And I think that it's difficult to stay one way all the time. I mean, that's just taxing to maintain one state for an extended period of time. You are like, people change very quickly. Flux is just a thing that happens. You don't have to keep your emotions one way or the other. Now I think that I appreciate when I'm able to let my mood change, and I'm able to reflect on why it changes so quickly. You lose patience with people who are not as efficient as you. Yes, but I know I shouldn't. I try to be patient when possible, but there are times, certainly, when you want to go faster or you want to be more efficient with something, but other people aren't quite keeping pace, or maybe they don't understand things quite as well. And of course, very often it's not a fault of anybody, but there is a certain sense of frustration or loss of patience with that. And I mean, everybody wants to be efficient. We don't want to lollygag or wait around for everybody else. I think this is somewhat natural response, but I think that's something that we should limit ourselves in. We should be patient. You often end up doing things at the last possible moment. I'm a student. So yeah, I do end up doing things at the last possible moment. Need to plan ahead better, man. Need to plan ahead better. You have always been fascinated by the question of what, if anything, happens after death. I would say, have I always been fascinated, even when I was a kid? Yeah, I guess a little bit. I'm not extremely into thinking about this, though, because I think in the end, what happens after death is that you're dead. Is there an afterlife? IDK? Is there reincarnation? Who knows? I don't necessarily subscribe to one belief or the other, but I try to focus on what happens when you're alive, because that is what you have control over directly during the period of time in which you are actively able to make things happen. When your body is not moving because you're dead, you can't necessarily change the way that things are. So I think that I do ponder this question, but I think ultimately you should live your life. 50%, let's go. You usually prefer to be around others rather than be on your own. So this is the introvert extrovert type question that is often asked. I think that I would say I do like being around other people. I think that people are both the best and worst thing on this planet. And in general, I do try to surround myself with people who are kind and good-hearted and uplifting and bright and have great ideas and are able to be creative and things like that. So I think based on the people that I'm around usually, I do prefer to be around them rather than on my own. And because that is the usual case for myself, the people that I'm around, I would say I slightly agree with this, but especially during quarantine, I feel that I've learned to be comfortable with myself a lot more. I think that there's value in being able to spend time on your own and to gain something from that time. So I don't feel particularly strongly one way or the other, I suppose, but when I'm around people, I'm usually around people that I like. Often people that I like a lot. And I think that that is what I prefer based on this question. You become bored or lose interest when the discussion gets highly theoretical. No, I disagree. I think that theoretical is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, philosophy is like very, almost entirely theoretical, but it's interesting to talk about that as well. This test is extremely theoretical. Am I going to apply a certain degree of introversion and extroversion based on the results of this test? Or am I just going to continue living my life exactly the same way as I did before? Probably the latter, but theoretically, this test would help me understand myself better and maybe implement certain changes in my life. I mean, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I think that talking theoretically is interesting and it has a lot of room for you to grow. Practically, you don't always have to apply everything that you talk about. It's not necessarily the only way to go about things, but yeah, I mean, this question is kind of weird, but highly theoretical. I don't know if I'm experienced enough in any field to be highly theoretical. But yeah, I think talking about things with people is just cool. If someone knows a lot and you want to talk theory, go for it, I guess. You find it easy to empathize with a person whose experiences are very different from yours. I would say I strongly agree. I mean, this is a personal anecdote, but I grew up in a household with a lot of very strong women. I myself am a man, and I identify that way, and my experiences are extremely different from someone who is born biologically female, say. But I think that being around other people makes you more empathetic, and it makes it a lot easier to figure out their struggles, the things they enjoy, the things they dislike, etc. And I think I personally find it easy to empathize with other people because, I mean, there is such thing as a shared human experience that you can draw connections from. No matter the life they've lived, their beliefs, things like that, there's common ground, and you can empathize with anybody. You don't necessarily have to agree with them, but you can at least understand where they come from. You usually postpone finalizing decisions for as long as possible. For as long as possible, I don't know about that, But yeah, oftentimes I do procrastinate in finalizing decisions, even when they may be important. And I think that's not a good thing. I think I would prefer to be on this disagree side here. But the way I am, I'm definitely on the disagree side, yeah. You rarely second guess the choices that you have made. I want to put neutral, but because I don't think that would accurately represent where I actually am, I would say that I'm kind of on the agree side. I know that before I was more meticulous and like double checking everything, make sure that you, make sure that you know what you're doing, or you blah blah blah. But I've recently subscribed more to the method of measure twice, cut once, which is essentially that you need to be confident in what you're doing and execute it well. You don't want to execute and re-execute, or answer and re-answer, make a choice and then remake that choice. You want to evaluate properly based on the conditions given and do something that makes sense. So I think that I would say I slightly agree with this one as well. But I do second guess my choices that I've made. It happens. After a long and exhausting week, a lively social event is just what you need. No, you need to sleep. Or maybe I need to sleep. You enjoy going to art museums. Hell yeah, I love art museums. I think that museums of all sorts are very interesting. Having a history capsule that has curated selections of things that are relevant, topical, creative, engaging, etc. It's awesome. I like museums a lot, and I think that people who are like, oh, art museums are not a real history, that's stupid, because art is very much a part of human history. So yeah, I like art museums. I like it a lot. You often have a hard time understanding other people's feelings. I would say not fully disagree, because of course there is such thing as the human mystery. But I think I generally can understand what people are feeling, and I think that comes with trying to learn to be a more empathetic person. I'm not saying I'm perfect in any way. Hell's no to that. But I think that a lot of people give indication of how they're feeling. We naturally try to let others know, because it's easier to do so, I guess. And you just gotta try to pick up on that. You like to have a to-do list for each day. I mean, yeah, I do like to have a to-do list. Do I actually do it? Maybe not. You rarely feel insecure. I would say a slight disagree with this one. I think that insecurity happens to everybody, but I'd really try to be confident in my abilities and know that I'm capable to do a lot of things. But there are very many instances in which you would feel insecure about yourself, and especially I feel about how others perceive you. That is such a huge source of insecurity. And whether it's like body image, whether it's perception of how you are to other people, whether you're a quote good unquote person, a lot of that plays into insecurity. And I think that, personally, I've experienced it a lot in the past, maybe not as much now, but I do not rarely feel insecure. I think insecurity is something that comes and passes fairly regularly. But I try not to be wallowing in my own insecurity. You avoid making phone calls. I mean, I don't really know how this is necessarily a personality type, but yeah, I prefer text. It's much easier. Phone calls, like, it's not necessarily something that you can do asynchronously. Like, they have to pick up pretty much, or else you get a voicemail, and that's it. That's kind of lame. So yeah, I prefer text over phone calls. Yeah. You often spend a lot of time trying to understand views that are very different from your own. I do often spend a lot of time doing that, yeah. Not necessarily just from like a political standpoint, but oftentimes people have opinions on pieces of art or media or things like that, and I really want to know where they come from, because there's no such thing as, okay, there is such thing as like a baseless interpretation, I guess, technically speaking, but there's very rarely people who interpret things in a certain way and don't have a reason for doing so. Even if that reason sucks, I would like to know what that reason is. And there are a lot of sucky reasons. In your social circle, you are often the one who contacts your friends and initiates activities. Unfortunately, that's a hard disagree. I would really like to do so more, but a lot of the times I just feel maybe I shouldn't bother other people, or maybe I just want to work on myself a little bit as well. Does that actually happen? I don't really know, man. Not really. But I feel like I'm never really the one to contact friends and initiate activities. But I really should. I like hanging out with friends, and I should do it more. If your plans are interrupted, your top priority is to get back on track as soon as possible. No, I slightly disagree with this one. I think that my top priority is to, handle the interruption, whether it's like a good thing or a bad thing, get through with that, and then get back to what you need to do. So I would say slightly or moderately disagree with this one. I think that plans are made to provide a framework for what you should do, not necessarily determine the end result in its entirety. You're still bothered by mistakes that you made a long time ago. I don't think this ever really goes away. I think personally, people will always be bothered by some mistakes that they made a long time ago. It's just like a nagging sensation in the back of your head. But do I actively let it get to me? I really try not to, so I think I'm going very slightly agree here. Do I know that I made mistakes in the past? Yes. And I really regret some of those. But I think it's important to acknowledge that you were a different person then. You can grow from these experiences and these mistakes. You can learn from yourself. That's the best person to learn from, man. You rarely contemplate the reasons for human existence or the meaning of life. I mean, no. I think rarely is a strong word to use for this one. It's not necessarily as deep as like some sort of philosophical argument, but sometimes you're just like, yeah, bro, why are we here, man? Like, isn't this kind of crazy, the way that things are, the way that we are, the way that life is, the way that people are? I think that's something that comes up every now and then, and something that is very, very reasonable room for thought. So I disagree with the rarely part. Your emotions control you more than you control them. Disagree. Maybe moderately. I think I'm an emotional person. Very emo, as they like to say. But I think that I would like to think that I generally try to keep my emotions in check. I'm attuned to them, of course, but try not to let them overwhelm me. So I would say that I would control my emotions more than they control me. You take great care to not make people look bad even when it's completely their fault. 100%. You can be at fault for something, but it could be unintentional. It could be, if you make a mistake, you shouldn't be shamed for doing so, I think. I don't want to make people look bad pretty much ever. Even when it's completely their fault is not necessarily the clause that I would put after this. If it was, even when they maliciously do so, even when they act maliciously or something like that, I mean, yeah, I would make them look bad if possible, because if they do bad intentionally, they better look bad. But if it's completely their fault, I don't really want to be the person to exacerbate whatever struggle they might be going through. If you mess up really badly, you know you messed up. There's no other person on the planet who knows you messed up more than you did. And I don't think I should be the person who's judging them and making them look bad or whatever. Your personal work style is closer to spontaneous bursts of energy than organized and consistent efforts. I kind of wish I was on disagree side, but I don't really have the energy usually to make organized and consistent efforts, and I kind of work in erratic intervals. I would say I do want to nail down that consistent organized schedule, but that's just not really how I am at the moment. I really wish I was, but it's not really how it goes down. When someone thinks highly of you, you wonder how long it will take for them to feel disappointed in you. Now, this is a weird question because this is very specific. Do I wonder how long it'll take them to feel disappointed in me? I mean, yeah, actually. I don't know if this is a widely known fact, but I'm not sure. I don't think I actually tell anybody this, mostly because it never comes up in conversation. But what I would consider my greatest fear, okay, fear of heights is my greatest like tangible fear, but my greatest fear overall is fear of failure. I really don't want to fail myself, but especially other people. It matters a lot that I'm able to succeed for them. And failure is something that I often dread. So I think that wondering how long it will take them to feel disappointed in you, it's kind of specific, but I would have to agree with that. I dread disappointing people and failing people, is what I would say. You would love a job that requires you to work alone most of the time. Not really. I'm trying to think between slightly and moderately disagree. Because I think that I would like to have a job where I'm able to work with people who are cool. And working alone most of the time seems like a lonely, potentially lonely way to live out my adult life. So I would say moderately disagree. Work time alone is good, but I would like interpersonal communication as well to be a big part of it. You believe that pondering abstract philosophical questions is a waste of time. Hard to disagree. I think that philosophical questions are often what drive people to do certain things, and having a philosophical basis for the way that you live your life is important. You feel more drawn to places with busy, bustling atmospheres than quiet, intimate places. No, I prefer quiet, intimate places. I see the appeal of a busy, bustling atmosphere, and I feel like it's cool to get lost in that, but I think that it's best to be with 5 people you really love than 5,000 who you don't care about. You know at first glance how someone is feeling. I mean, at first glance, maybe not, but I think it's generally pick up on certain actions, on certain ways that they behave, mannerisms, etc., that you learn how they're feeling. And this can be a quick process, but at first glance, I would not trust myself to tell how someone is feeling. You often feel overwhelmed. Yes, I think that being overwhelmed is something that happens to a lot of people. To be whelmed or to be underwhelmed is not really something that you do when you strive to achieve a lot of things, or when you strive to improve yourself consistently. I'm not saying that I'm necessarily always improving myself, but I try to do, I would say, a fairly significant amount of things, and oftentimes that overwhelms me. You complete things methodically without skipping over any steps. Yes, I'm a step-by-step kind of person, usually, I would say. And if there's a procedure, I try to follow it accurately, precisely. And I think having a method to do things makes you work efficiently often. There's a process to things, I think. And following that process can be a really good thing very often. You're very intrigued by things labeled as controversial. Disagree. I'm not very intrigued. I could be intrigued at some controversial topics, but I think that genuinely the controversy is often overblown, exacerbated by media, or just stupid. And I don't want to talk about stupid things for an extended period of time if it's not benefiting people necessarily. You would pass along a good opportunity if you thought someone else needed it more. This may seem like a selfish thing to say, but I would say slight disagree for this one. I think that I pursue opportunity quite a bit. even if someone might need it more, I would want it for myself to be able to have this opportunity and to learn and grow from it. Someone else might need it more, but they might not necessarily benefit from it as much. For example, if I thought that someone needed a spot at like some sort of study session, I mean, I would probably choose to go for myself, even if I had like a slightly higher grade or something. This is very school-based, but I mean, I would want myself to succeed, and I would guess that maybe they have another method of studying or something like that. I mean, this is a very circumstantial thing, obviously, so I'm not feeling very strongly one way or the other. But maybe it may be selfish, but I would try to have an opportunity for myself if I were to get it or something like that. It is conditional, though, I would say. If I did nothing and I got this opportunity, but someone else really needed it more, then I would probably let them have it. I do try to do that, yeah. But if we both worked for it and I ended up getting chosen, even if they might have needed it more, I think that I wouldn't be opposed to just taking it for myself, is what I would say. So, call me selfish if you want. Go ahead. Struggle with deadlines. Yeah, I do struggle with deadlines. I'm sometimes turning things late. I sometimes just really do it like the day or morning of the night before, or morning of the day that I'm supposed to turn it in. That is a problem, and I will work on addressing that, or so I say. You feel confident that things will work out for you. I do feel confident that things will work out for me. I think that I generally work pretty hard in the things that I do, and I think that combination of effort, luck, which I have been a very lucky person, just based on family situation, like having friends that are supportive and kind and wonderful, access to resources such as the ones that allow me to record this video on a $99 microphone, and things like that. So I do feel confident that things will work out, and I try to be optimistic about it. Okay, gender, I do identify as male. Let's see what we got. Mediator, inf petit. Let's see. Mind, more introverted than extroverted, more intuitive than observant, more feeling than thinking, although this is very close, I notice. Prospecting rather than judging, turbulent over assertive. Let's read my profile. No thanks. Mediator, inf petit, inf a. I got inf petit. Introduction. Although they may seem quiet or unassuming, mediators, inf-Ps, have vibrant, passionate inner lives. Creative and imaginative, they happily lose themselves in daydreams, inventing all sorts of stories and conversations in their minds. These personalities are known for their sensitivity. Mediators can have profound emotional responses to music, art, nature, and the people around them. Idealistic and empathetic, mediators long for deep, soulful relationships, and they feel called to help others. But because this personality type makes up such a small portion of the population, mediators may sometimes feel lonely or invisible, adrift in a world that doesn't seem to appreciate the traits that make them unique. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. J.R.R. Tolkien. Generally, I feel like this is pretty accurate. I would say that creative and imaginative is something that I've tried to work on, and maybe I have become more creative over time. I'm a very sensitive person, I would say. Yeah, I would say I'm very sensitive. Definitely more so than most people, I would say. Idealistic, empathetic are two adjectives that I could use to describe myself, yes. I do feel called to help others, I guess, yeah. Do I necessarily feel lonely or invisible, drifting in a world that doesn't seem to appreciate the traits that make me unique? No, I feel pretty appreciated. Yeah, gift of empathy. Speaking their truth. Speak your truth, sis. In search of a calling. I mean, yeah, I guess I do tend to feel directionless at times, but I feel like that's a general human experience that a lot of people go through. I wouldn't agree that this is limited to mediators or things like that. Maybe not even a tendency. I feel like this is just, I'm not sure who other mediators would be that experience that. Why don't we check that out maybe? Are there other famous mediators? Hello? Hello, hello? Okay, let's see. Mediators you may know: J.R. Tolkien, William Shakespeare, Bjork, Alicia Keys, Tom Hiddleston. Oh my god, Tom Hiddleston's quite hot. Julia Roberts, William Wordsworth, Johnny Depp, Frodo Baggins, Amélie Poulain, Arwen, Fox Mulder, Anne of Green Gables, Sybil Branson Land Sweets, Konstantin Levin. I don't know most of these people, I think. But overall, I would say that this test was quite accurate. Now, a bit of history with this Myers-Briggs test. I did get Inf P on my last test. I got Inf P on the test before that. And I think something else prior to that. But on my most recent tests, I have fairly consistently gotten Inf P. I noticed I've maybe become more feeling than thinking. I stay pretty intermediate between introverted and extroverted often, but yeah, generally more introverted on that side. Fairly intuitive person. I know some people might describe me as spontaneous, circumstantially. Not necessarily all the time, of course. Prospecting rather than judging. I mean, I don't really know what that means, but I try not to judge people, I guess. That is true. Turbulent rather than assertive. I don't really know what that means. But yeah, this was my personality test. I've got some pretty good outro music playing right now, guys. Let me know maybe what your Myers-Briggs is, what you think of this test, whether you think this is accurate to me. Also, if you know me, that could be fun. And I'm interested to see if you agreed or disagreed on any of the questions that I answered as well. If you have comments or feedback or anything of that sort, leave it in the comment section below. But I really hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe you learned a little bit more about me. Maybe I learned a little bit more about me. Who knows? But yeah, this was actually a lot of fun. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.